Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, how many years of your life have you actually lived? And how many have you merely existed through, letting the days pass by on autopilot? When was the last time you made a decision that was genuinely yours and not a reaction to what others expect from you? Here is an even more disturbing question. If you died tomorrow, would you die as who you truly are? Or would you die as who you believed you were supposed to be? Most people never ask themselves these questions, and that is exactly why they waste the only life they have. They wake up, follow the routine, chase goals they did not choose, play roles they never wanted, and go to sleep exhausted by a life that is not theirs, year after year, decade after decade, until it is too late. Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, dedicated his life to a single fundamental problem. Why do so many people live empty, mechanical existences, devoid of meaning? Why do so many human beings die without ever truly having been born? Jung's answer is disturbing, because most of us prefer the safety of unconsciousness to the terror of individuation. We prefer to be nobody rather than risk discovering who we really are. Jung was not just a theorist abstracting about philosophical concepts. He was an explorer of the most dangerous territory that exists, the human psyche. And what he discovered in the depths of the unconscious was revolutionary. He realized that every human being is born with a unique potential, an individual essence that cries out for expression. But society, family, culture, all these forces conspire to turn us into copies, into social automatons. The Jungian concept of individuation is not about becoming selfish or isolated. It is about becoming indivisible, whole. It is the painful and necessary process of integrating all the fragmented parts of yourself, especially those you were taught to reject, and emerging as an authentic and complete human being. Throughout this video, we are going to dive into the fundamental principles of Carl Jung to understand how you are, most likely, wasting your existence at this very moment. More importantly, we are going to decode the map Jung left for those who are courageous enough to stop merely surviving and start living. To stop playing characters and start writing their own story. This is not a video about superficial self-help. It is a manual of psychological war against the forces, external and internal, that conspire to keep you asleep, docile, domesticated. Get ready to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself. Recognize that you are living someone else's life. The first Jungian law is brutal in its simplicity. Most of us are not living our own life. We are living the life our parents wanted for us, or the life our culture considers successful, or the life that protects us from social rejection. Jung called this living through the persona, the social mask we wear in order to be accepted. The persona in itself is not the problem. We all need social masks to function in society. The problem arises when you confuse the mask with your true face, when you spend so much time playing a role that you forget you are acting. For Jung, the persona was a psychological necessity, but also the most common trap of human existence. Think about it. How many of your choices were really yours? The career you chose, was it an authentic choice, or were you trying to prove something? Trying to please someone, trying to live up to an image of success that was implanted in you since childhood. Jung observed that people would arrive at his office, usually in their 40s or 50s, in deep existential crisis. They had everything society promised would bring happiness, success, family, recognition, and yet they felt empty. Why? Because they had spent entire decades being who they were supposed to be, never who they actually were.
Jung had a patient, a successful businessman who apparently had everything: wealth, prestige, a perfect family. but he arrived at Jung's office on the verge of a nervous breakdown. In their sessions, a terrible truth emerged. The man had never wanted to be a businessman. In essence, he was an artist. But his father, a ruthless capitalist, had molded his son in his own image. For 25 years, this man lived someone else's life. He wore the mask so perfectly that he forgot he was wearing a mask. And now the weight of this betrayal of himself was destroying his psyche from the inside out. His dreams were filled with images of prisons, of being buried alive, of suffocation. Jung did not tell him to abandon everything. He said something deeper. You need to find a way to honor who you really are, even within the limitations of the life you have built. Today, the tyranny of the persona is even more sophisticated. Social media has created a laboratory of false personas. You are not just performing for your family or your social circle, you are performing for the entire world, 24 hours a day. Obsessive image curation. The need to project success, happiness, achievement. Observe the people around you. How many are genuinely happy versus how many are performing happiness? How many chose their careers out of passion versus safety, approval, or status?
If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support.
The Jungian question is simple but devastating. If you took off all the masks, if you removed all external expectations, who would you be? And more importantly, do you have the courage to find out? Arsenal. Mask exercise. Tonight, take a sheet of paper and draw a vertical line down the middle. On one side, write, "Who I pretend to be." On the other, "Who I really am when no one is watching." Be brutally honest. List your behaviors, your opinions, your real desires versus the ones you perform. Most people are shocked when they realize the abyss between the two columns. Daily practice. Once a day, do something small that is 100% authentic for you, even if it is socially uncomfortable. Express a real opinion. Wear something you truly like, not what is appropriate. Say no to something you would normally accept out of social obligation. Start small. Authenticity is a muscle that atrophies with disuse.
Confront your shadow, or it will control your life. Jung's second law is the most disturbing. Everything you reject in yourself does not disappear. It goes to the basement of the psyche, what Jung called the shadow, and from there it controls your life in ways you do not even notice. The shadow is made up of all the aspects of yourself that you consider unacceptable: anger, envy, selfishness, sexual desires, brutal ambition, cruelty, everything your upbringing, your religion, your culture taught you to suppress. Jung had a radical observation. The more you try to be good, the more you repress your shadow, and the more powerful it becomes. The shadow does not disappear because you ignore it. It manifests in inexplicable outbursts of anger, in repetitive self-sabotage, in projections when you hate in others exactly what you cannot accept in yourself. Jung said, "Everything that irritates you in others is a clue to something about yourself." The Jungian paradox is this: you only become truly good when you integrate your capacity for evil. You only become truly strong when you accept your weakness. You only become truly free when you recognize your internal prisons. Jung reported a fascinating case. A religious pastor, a man dedicated to preaching love, compassion, moral purity,
But he sought Jung because he had recurring nightmares in which he committed acts of brutal violence. He woke up terrified, convinced he was being possessed by demons. Jung immediately recognized what was happening. The man had built a persona so rigid of absolute goodness that all his natural aggressiveness, his justified anger, his vital force, all of that was pushed into the shadow, and the shadow was screaming to be recognized through the nightmares. Jung did not tell the pastor to become violent. He said something more subtle. You need to recognize that you are capable of anger, that you have selfish desires, that you are not only light, but also darkness. When you accept this, the darkness will no longer need to scream through your dreams. Months later, the pastor reported something extraordinary. When he stopped trying to be perfectly good, when he accepted his capacity for anger and selfishness, he became genuinely more compassionate. Because now it was real compassion, not moral performance.
We live in an era of extreme moral polarization. Everyone wants to be seen as being on the right side. On social media, in political discussions, even in personal relationships, there is an obsession with projecting moral purity. I am good, they are bad. Jung would say this is psychologically childish and dangerous, because when you are unable to recognize your own capacity for evil, you become incapable of controlling it. It emerges unconsciously, disguised as justice or virtue. Observe someone who is obsessed with denouncing a specific flaw in others. Chances are they are fighting that same flaw in themselves. Projection is the shadow's favorite mechanism. The arsenal, the dark mirror exercise. List 3 characteristics you most hate in other people. Be specific. Now, the hard part. Find where those characteristics exist in you, even in subtle or repressed forms. If you hate arrogant people, ask yourself, where is my hidden arrogance? If you hate selfish people, where is my unacknowledged selfishness? Dialogue with the shadow. Jung recommended something radical: talking to your shadow. When you feel anger, envy, or any negative emotion, do not suppress it. Sit down, close your eyes, and ask, what are you trying to tell me? What legitimate need do you represent? Generally, you will discover that behind the bad emotion, there is a legitimate human need that you have been denying.
Stop seeking meaning outside. It only exists within. The third Jungian law is philosophically devastating. The meaning of your existence cannot be found anywhere external, not in professional success, not in social recognition, not in the validation of others, not in relationships, not in material achievements. Jung was categorical. Meaning can only emerge from the encounter with your own unconscious. Jung made a crucial distinction between living and truly existing. Most people exist, they occupy space, consume resources, pass the time. But to live, in the Jungian sense, means to inhabit a narrative with personal meaning. It means that your life expresses something unique, something only you can express. The problem is that modern society sells a seductive lie. Meaning can be bought, conquered, achieved through external metrics. Earn X amount of money and you will be happy. Reach Y status and you will be fulfilled. Achieve Z recognition and your life will have meaning. Jung saw this as a form of existential prostitution. You sell your authenticity in exchange for crumbs of external validation. And you inevitably discover that external validation never satisfies. It is a bottomless pit. True meaning, Jung said, emerges when you stop seeking approval and start seeking integration. When you stop trying to be special in the eyes of others and start striving to be whole in your own eyes. Jung had a patient, a 45-year-old woman, who had dedicated her entire life to being the perfect daughter, then the perfect wife, then the perfect mother. She had shaped every aspect of her existence to meet the expectations of others. And now, with her children grown, her husband distant, her parents dead, she found herself in an abyssal emptiness. "Who am I?" she asked Jung, crying. "I spent 45 years being what everyone wanted. Now I don't know who I am." Jung guided her through a painful process, reconnecting with the desires, dreams, and aspects of herself that she had buried decades earlier. Abandoned hobbies, repressed passions, parts of her personality that were sacrificed on the altar of family approval. Slowly, she began to recover fragments of herself. She went back to painting, something she had loved in her youth, but abandoned because it wasn't practical. She began expressing opinions that contradicted her husband. She set boundaries with her adult children. She reported something extraordinary. "For the first time in my life, I feel real, and it is terrifying and liberating at the same time."
We live in the age of instant validation. Likes, comments, success metrics constantly updated. Every post, every achievement, every moment is evaluated by the court of public opinion. The result? An entire generation outsourcing its sense of meaning to algorithms and audiences. My life has value if it generates engagement. My experiences are real if they are documented and approved. Jung would say, this is not life, it is perpetual performance. It is existence mediated and filtered through the judging gaze of others. Observe how many decisions you make thinking, what will people think, versus what does this mean to me? The proportion between these two orientations determines whether you are living your life or the life of a character created for others' approval. The arsenal, the deathbed test. Jung recommended this brutal exercise. Imagine yourself on your deathbed, looking back. If you keep living the way you are living now, will you look at your life with satisfaction or with bitter regret? List the things you are doing out of obligation, fear of rejection, or the pursuit of approval. Now ask, is it worth trading years of my finite life for this? Reconnection with the personal symbol. Jung believed that each person has symbols, images, metaphors that resonate deeply with their individual psyche. What is yours? What activity or expression makes you feel more alive, more like yourself? It does not matter how unproductive or not profitable it is. If it resonates with your soul, it is a thread that connects you to your personal meaning. Call that thread. Up to this point, we have talked about the fundamental traps that keep you stuck in an empty existence. The persona that keeps you playing roles. The shadow that sabotages you from within. The search for meaning in the wrong places. But recognizing the problem is only the beginning. Now we are going to enter the deeper and more dangerous territory of Jungian psychology. Because Jung did not offer only diagnoses, he offered a path, a map for the complete transformation of the psyche. The next laws are not about defense, they are about existential offense, about rebuilding your life from scratch, from an authentic core, about becoming, finally, indivisible, whole, real. Get ready, because what comes next demands more than intellectual understanding. It demands courage to die psychologically and be reborn.
Listen to your dreams. They reveal what you are refusing to see. Jung was categorical. Your dreams are not random.
They are direct messages from your unconscious, trying to draw your attention to truths your conscious mind refuses to face. Ignoring your dreams is ignoring the wisest voice that exists within you. The conscious mind is limited, defensive, full of rationalizations. It protects your ego, maintains your comfortable illusions, avoids painful truths. But the unconscious does not lie. It does not care about your psychological defenses. It wants balance, integration, wholeness. Dreams, Jung said, are the way the unconscious compensates for the imbalances of conscious life. If you are living in an overly rational way, your dreams will be chaotic and emotional. If you are repressing anger, your dreams will be violent. If you are running away from a truth, your dreams will place it in front of you in increasingly dramatic ways. Jung made a profound observation. Recurring dreams are emergency cries. The unconscious is desperately trying to communicate something vital that you keep ignoring. The more you ignore it, the more dramatic the dreams become. Jung reported his own transformative dream. At 38, at the height of professional success, he dreamed that he was in a magnificent house. He went down to the basement and discovered increasingly older layers of architecture until he reached a primitive cave with ancient human skulls. Upon waking, Jung understood. The dream was revealing the layers of the human psyche. The modern house was the conscious ego. The basement was the personal unconscious. The collective unconscious was the psychic structures shared by all humanity. That dream changed the entire direction of his psychology. He understood that there were dimensions of the psyche much deeper than he had imagined, and all of this was trying to emerge through dreams. The arsenal. Dream journal. Keep a notebook beside your bed. When you wake up, before doing anything else, write down everything you remember from your dreams. Do not analyze, just record. Over time, patterns will emerge. Dialogue with dream figures. Choose a recurring figure from your dreams, a person, an animal, a monster. Close your eyes and imagine a conversation. Who are you? What do you want from me? What are you trying to show me? Jung called this active imagination, and he found that dream figures, when questioned, revealed surprising insights.
Except that transformation requires symbolic death. The fifth Jungian law is the hardest. You cannot transform without dying. Not literally, but psychologically. The old version of you, with its defenses, comfortable lies, illusions, it needs to die so that something new can be born. Jung observed that every genuine psychological transformation follows the same archetypal pattern, death and rebirth. You see this in all mythologies, in all religions, in all rites of passage, because it is a fundamental pattern of the human psyche. The problem is that most people want transformation without death. They want to be new without abandoning the old. They want growth without pain. And this, Jung said, is impossible. It is like wanting a butterfly without destroying the caterpillar. The process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, demands that you kill the false versions of yourself, the identities you built to please others, the defenses that keep you safe but imprisoned, the patterns that define you but also limit you. And this symbolic death is terrifying because, for a moment, you are in a void. The old version has died, the new one has not yet been fully born. Jung called this the dark night of the soul. It is the moment of maximum danger and maximum potential. Jung went through his own symbolic death at 38 after breaking with Freud. He entered a period he himself described as a confrontation with the unconscious, a voluntary descent into psychic chaos. For years, Jung experienced visions, hallucinations, episodes of dissociation. He felt as though he were losing his mind. But he made a radical decision. Instead of running away, he would dive completely into the experience. He would talk to the figures that emerged. He would record everything meticulously. On the other side of this psychological death, Jung emerged transformed. He had confronted his own unconscious directly and survived. And now he had a map, not only for himself, but for all humanity. He later wrote, "The greatest transformations in my life came from the moments when I was not sure I would survive psychologically. But it was precisely in those moments that something new could be born."
Modern culture is horrified by the void. We jump from one relationship to another with no pause. We leap from one job to another without reflection. We fill every moment of silence with distraction. Why? Because the void is terrifying. But Jung would say, the void is necessary. It is the space between the death of the old and the birth of the new. If you skip that space, if you rush the transformation, you simply recreate slightly different versions of the same prisons. Real transformation demands that you sit in discomfort, that you accept not knowing who you are for a while, that you tolerate the anxiety of not having ready-made answers. That is symbolic death. And most people will do anything to avoid it. The arsenal. Symbolic death ritual. Write on a piece of paper everything you need to let die. Identities, behaviors, toxic relationships, limiting beliefs. Be specific. Then, in a moment of conscious intention, burn the paper or bury it. It may seem superficial, but Jung believed in rituals. They speak directly to the unconscious, which thinks in symbols, not logic. Identity fast. For 1 week, stop doing the things that define you. If you define yourself by your work, take a week without talking or thinking about it. If you define yourself as funny or intelligent, temporarily stop performing those traits. Observe what is left when you remove your usual identities. That is the raw material of your real self. Individuation is a solitary process, and that is liberating. The sixth and final Jungian law is profoundly solitary. The process of becoming who you truly are cannot be outsourced, shared, or validated by anyone but yourself. It is a journey you make alone, in the dark, with no guaranteed maps. Jung observed a paradox. The more you individuate, the more you become authentically yourself, the less you fit into conventional social categories. You become unclassifiable, unique in a way that defies labels. And this has a cost: loneliness. Not necessarily physical loneliness, but existential loneliness. Because now you're operating from an inner core that most people have never accessed. You speak a language that few understand. You value things that society considers unimportant. But Jung saw this not as tragedy, but as liberation. Because now you no longer need external validation. You are no longer trapped by the tyranny of others' opinions. You are free, in the deepest and most frightening way possible. Jung said, individuation does not make you special. It makes you yourself, and that can be profoundly non-special in the eyes of the world. Jung reported the case of an artist who sought therapy because he felt out of place all the time. He did not fit into any group. He did not share mainstream values. He did not identify with the artistic movements of his time. In the therapeutic process, a truth emerged. The artist was more individuated than most. Through much suffering, he had found his own path, but now he felt lonely. Jung replied, "You expect individuation to come with social rewards, but the reward is internal. You do not feel empty, you do not feel fake, you feel real. Isn't that enough?" The artist took months to process this, but eventually he accepted. The feeling of being real with himself
was more valuable than any amount of superficial social belonging.
We live in the era of FOMO, fear of missing out, the fear of missing something. Social media constantly creates the illusion that everyone else is living extraordinary lives full of connection and meaning. Jung would say it is all performance, and the more you chase validation on digital platforms, the more you move away from yourself. The Jungian path is the opposite, to dive into conscious solitude, not the solitude of rejection, but the solitude of choice. Time with yourself, silence, reflection, direct confrontation with your own psyche without distractions. Does it sound frightening? It should. But on the other side of this solitude lies something rare, a genuine connection with yourself. And paradoxically, when you find this inner connection, your external connections become deeper because they are now based on authenticity, not on need. The Arsenal. Solitude retreat. Once a month, take an entire day completely alone. No social media, no messages, no passive entertainment. Just you, a notebook, and unstructured time. At first, it will be unbearable. Your brain will scream for distraction. But if you persist, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear thoughts that are normally buried under constant noise. Inner dialogue. Jung recommended talking to yourself as if you were speaking with a wise friend. Ask questions like, what do I really want? What am I avoiding? If I had total courage, what would I do differently? Write the answers without censorship. What emerges is usually surprising and revealing. Carl Jung spent decades exploring the depths of the human psyche. And in the end, his message was simple, but radically difficult. You have only one life, and wasting it, living like an automaton, following scripts written by others, avoiding the confrontation with who you truly are, that is the only true tragedy. Individuation is not an easy path. It demands that you confront your shadows, that you abandon your comfortable masks, that you accept the loneliness of being authentic, that you go through painful symbolic deaths, that you listen to truths your conscious mind would rather ignore. But on the other side of this process lies something that most people never experience, the feeling of being truly alive, of inhabiting your own existence, of being indivisible, whole, real. Jung had a phrase that sums it all up. I would rather be whole than good. Because good, in the social sense, usually means fragmented, performative, false. Whereas whole means integrated, authentic, alive. The choice is yours. You can continue wasting your existence, playing roles, seeking external validation, avoiding the confrontation with your own psyche. It is the safest path. It is also the emptiest. Or you can choose individuation, the dangerous path, the solitary path, the path that demands everything from you. But it is the only path that leads to real life. Jung's final question for you is this: do you have enough courage to stop wasting your existence and start living it?